Hey everybody, welcome to the TIWAKS podcast episode 9, Maybe. And everybody needs to remember that maybe is not a yes, and that's an important thing to remember in all scenarios, including but not limited to whenever I just decide on a cold open and Brennan has to deal with my chaos. I am Nathan, also known as Roby1 Kenobi 91 on most forms of social media, and my beard is an absolute mess because I've been wearing a mask all day, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Um, this is my fantastic co-host.
I am Brennan. My name is wherever it is. I don't can't see the thing from your guys' perspective.
You never would.
I am Brennan Brashew on Twitter and Instagram, and then also Brenbricks on Twitch. If I ever go live, which I may be able to do at some point now, considering we just got a huge internet upgrade, going from 2 megabits per second upload to 940.
Your camera is almost clearer than mine, and mine is like direct feed.
Yeah, we it's a significant difference. But yeah,
So let's
today's episode
start.
is called Maybe.
Yeah, let's start with some of the stuff that maybe hasn't been so great this week, and we'll just kind of bounce around, or I guess this past week and a half. The gosh, where do we even start? How
That depends entirely on where we want to go with this.
we have I can't even keep track of what happened last week. All I know is that over the course of a week, things went from like amazing to like a hailstorm of horrible. And then we had, at least I personally had one like really nice thing, and I will talk about that on the podcast, but we won't name names. But it is what it is. But in case we ever get big, we got to protect identities. Got to protect people's identities, man.
Of course.
So somewhere in that crock, as I like to call it, the crock of fuck, um, Eddie Van Halen died. Johnny
Yeah.
Nash died, who sang, the I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. That one, he died. Adam Kovic of Funhouse fame and I believe Inside Gaming, back before it got rebranded as Inside Gaming, was exposed for jerking off in his own office and sending both video and pictures to fans, none of which was done with the consent of his wife, apparently, and that's not good. And then Ryan
Yeah.
Haywood, of Achievement Hunter fame, turns out he's a sexual predator.
Like, guys, it's like
There is
look,
a
I'm gonna lay it out on the line. I'm gonna lay it out on the line here. I've look. I've done some things that I would be embarrassed if they were found out about, but I wouldn't be ashamed because I don't do things that are predatory. Like it's God, like I'm sorry, it's not hard. It is literally the default option.
Yep.
Like I it's so frustrating. And I kind of want to address. I feel like there's a growing community of people who will say things when something like this comes up. They will say things along the line of like, "Oh, you can't even say or do anything anymore." I mean, not so much in terms of like overt sexual misconduct of this sort, but
Right.
whenever there's a misconduct scandal that comes up, people make a big fuss about how like oh, political correctness is going too far and all this stuff, and it's it's always so upsetting to me because I'm like, alternatively, start caring more about other people than about your own instant gratification. And I don't know, like I'm not a perfect person. None of us are perfect people, but I feel like there's so many things where it's like, just don't do that stuff. Don't don't be a jerk.
I haven't
It's
read.
easy.
I haven't read too much into the Adam Kovic stuff, just because I don't think it's gone on nearly as long. But the Ryan Haywood stuff has gone. So there's more and more stories coming out, like almost daily. There's another story that pops up of another like fan who was more or less effectively groomed by him. It's it's upsetting, and if the receipts, like all the everything is as it appears,
Yeah,
this has been happening for about 3 years.
it's
It's an interesting thing. I don't know how much Achievement Hunter or Funhouse content you've consumed, if any.
it hasn't been a huge part of my media consumption, but I definitely know of it. I know of its significance.
I
You
started
know.
watching Achievement Hunter back when it was just Achievement Hunter, not Achievement Hunter and Let's Play. Back in probably about 2011 or 2012 is something my brother sent to me, and I got really hooked on that. And I watched that for a good 3 or 4
Yeah.
years, pretty consistently. Like that was the thing. Um, I loved watching Let's Plays. The Minecraft Let's Plays in particular were like my jam. I loved the stuff that back in the Rey Narvaez era was like that was my go-to. I love that shit. And then when Funhouse started back in like 2013 or 2014 or something like that, maybe a little bit later than that. But like I was big into Funhouse at the time. I really enjoyed their content, the kind of unapologetic, little offensive at times, but it was never done with that intent of malice. Where it's like, you know what,
Mm.
the, I know this is not true for everybody, and it's something that I think they address every now and again. But it's I have certain content creators that I like, Game Grumps and Funhouse in particular at the time, where they have made a couple of slightly racist Asian jokes,
Mm.
and they're funny, and they make me laugh as an Asian American man. It's not. I know that this is the joke that presents itself. It's the like this is what's happening. Let's make this joke and just we'll apologize later because we this is funny. And if you have a
Mm.
sense of humor, you're going to laugh about it. It's not
Mm.
the same kind of egregious humor at another human being's expense type thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I can sit there and laugh about it and also know that like I know that James Willems and Elise Williams and Lauren Sontag and Aaron Hansen and Danny Avidan, I know they're not racist people, that they're doing it from a place of this is funny, be willing to laugh at this because it's funny and we're taking this risk. They do it very sparingly, especially nowadays with the more like woke aware movement, that there's enough people who said like I get that somebody else finds that funny and even people like me find that funny, but it hurts. And people like Dan Avidan and James Willems have more or less come forward and said, you know what, you're right, it does hurt you, so we shouldn't do it anymore, and I'm sorry. The one thing that I like that they don't do is they don't then go and try and strip all their content away that had
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. Like, no, leave that. It's why I think it's really impressive with some of the old Cartoon Network, I don't know, Hanna-Barbera cartoons that like were maybe a little racist at the time. They just throw up the thing. It's like this was made in a different time when racial justice was
Mm.
kind of in a different era. We're leaving these unedited as is so you can still view these, but now understand that all of us are viewing this under a very different lens in a very different context. Stuff like Speedy Gonzalez and like stuff like that.
Well, didn't they have a similar thing for like Looney Tunes? Because I know that
Yeah,
can contain
that was a big thing.
a lot of pretty overt racial stereotyping.
A lot of blackface in
Um,
that.
yeah, you know, shockingly common in less archaic media.
Yeah.
Really, like I feel like I mean Olivia was actually just telling me the other day that she has a friend who I won't name, but they come from a different country, a country in Europe, and blackface is part of one of their festivals every year, and it's it's something that I think about a lot because I think that more liberal people tend to view Europe as this kind of like haven of liberalism. And in many ways, in terms of social programs and stuff, like there's a reason for that. But I think particularly in the area that we live on the West Coast, where there's a lot of racial diversity, I think that the advantage that we have is that, well, again, it is that racial diversity, the cultural diversity, the fact that you're probably not going to go your whole life never seeing someone who's not the same color as you.
Yeah. So these were two Achievement Hunter and Funhouse were two things that like I were some of my like early adult formative years were spent watching this, and it shaped my sense of humor in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the ways that they just were, and in a different way, um, people like Jack Patillo kind of. I mean, if you don't follow Jack Patillo on Twitter, I would actually highly recommend it because he's like a pillar of the Achievement Hunter community in a lot of ways. He's one of the original members of Achievement Hunter along with Jeff Ramsey. And he does all kinds of like charity events, and he's big on like voter rights and mental health care, all these different things. Like just a super wholesome dude who like for the longest time regularly got bullied by the community, and just every day takes it in stride and continues to make some. One of my favorite Achievement Hunter moments actually is in one of their old Rainbow Six Let's Plays. Gavin goes to throw a grenade. It bounces off a wall and lands right in front of him. And this is when they were using the face scans of themselves. I don't know if you remember that old Rainbow Six. I think it was Rainbow Six Vegas. Where you could do like a face scan and put your face on it, and it has Gavin's like,
Oh, that's cool.
he's making a big doofy face to go along with it, and comes running at him, and like the grenade blows up and kills him. And Jack, like, I think he was probably like 2 seconds from pissing himself. He was laughing so hard, and it's just like stuff, moments like that, of just cool, impressive things. When they introduced Ryan fairly early on in Achievement Hunter, at first he was just like one of the tech guys who came on, and they had him be on screen a little bit more as they needed like the space, and eventually he became one of the original six. He was kind of seen as like this cool family man. He was a little bit older than the lads, but maybe on the younger side of the gents. Because it was lads and gents. You had lads, which was Michael, Gavin, and Ray, who were like in their 20s, and then Jeff, Ryan, and Jack are all in their like mid to late 30s, probably pushing 40 at this point. And he was just always this really just kind of fatherly. He has two kids that he cares about a lot, his wife, all that kind of stuff. And there's now the question of how, if we're seeing evidence from 2017 that this was going on, how far back does this really go? Like, there was always this running joke that it's Ryan the insane guy, Ryan the psychopath, Ryan the sociopath, the Mad King, all these different stereotypes where he's like, in a lot of the Let's Plays, he will take like the chaotic evil route just to like sow discord and create chaos for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And now knowing that maybe that wasn't so much an on-screen persona as it was just a person is upsetting.
It's upsetting when something. I mean, to just state the obvious, the most upsetting thing about it is that it happened. But I think an additional thing that sucks about it is that it when something happens that changes the way you view content you used to enjoy to the point you can't really enjoy it anymore. And again, like that's a very minor thing compared to the wrong that was done to these people who were groomed, but like just in addition,
it's so, and it's a weird thing. It came out because of a 4chan link, and like there's that question of can a wrong create a right in some way? Because
Right.
these came out through leaks. These were invasions of privacy for these to come out. The thing with the thing with Adam Kovic is that it's very much more a it's not great, but based on what we're seeing is that it was maybe not necessarily to fans specifically, but like to people that really didn't need to have that. And the real egregious part of it
Mm,
is that he was sometimes doing that in the office. Um,
yeah.
that's not great. But what Ryan was doing is like unequivocally worse. So
It's
it's that running question of somebody did there are two wrongs that were done here, and does the one minor wrong become right because it exposed this much greater like
I mean,
wrongdoing?
it gets into a philosophical question of that, and I think you can look at it from the viewpoint of, at least this is how I tend to think about it, is the outcome can be good and yet you can still consider the initial thing to be wrong. And I think that that for me depends upon the intention. So, for example, if somebody who knew about it was like, I need to make sure this gets leaked so people know so that this stops happening, that to me, I think is acceptable.
Which is what this strikes me as.
Yeah, I don't know about who leaked it or why they did it, but I think that if it was more a case of someone just wanting to like leak information to cause chaos, I don't think that that would probably be what it was. But or like I think once they had the information, I think that they kind of are obligated. If you find out something like that, I think you're kind of obligated to let people know. But because people are being actively harmed by your silence.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations, and I guess
That being that being said, I think that where I would take issue is if obviously things change once they know what's happening, but I think if someone just went out of their way to invade someone's privacy without knowing that there would be a mitigating reason, and then they find out that there is one, like that to me, even though the outcome is still positive, that to me would be less morally acceptable because you didn't really set out to right a wrong. You just kind of set out to be a dick and just happened to accidentally your way into doing something good.
it was different when I don't know if you remember, you probably do, that big like iCloud leak that happened for a bunch of celebrities back in like
Yeah.
2012 or 2013. A Rooster Teeth employee got involved in that. I don't think she works with Rooster Teeth every now and again. She's the voice actress for Weiss and Ruby.
Mhm.
Kara Eberl ended up in that set of leaks, and it was just like clearly they were photos that were meant for like a significant other or boyfriend, but it was just like kudos to the community for not like jumping on that and making a big deal about it. A lot of people stepped forward like that's like come on, man. And it for I think a lot of people it kind of helps show why stuff like that is not okay. Because it's one thing when you find out it's like Jennifer Lawrence or whoever. It's like well the Taylor Swift. Oh my goodness. But now it's this community member who is a voice actress for something that we really love from a company that at the time was treated like this moral paragon of entertainment media, and now it's since kind of more turned into just
Mhm.
a media giant, and some of the pitfalls that come with that. I think it made it a little more real for a lot of people, and made hopefully it made a couple people realize why this isn't okay. And
I,
yeah,
I was just gonna say, I think
one of the reasons why it's so different is because there wasn't any wrongdoing happening there. And you can make the argument with the Ryan Haywood and Adam Kovic situation, where if everything is technically consensual and like nobody is underage, you can make the thin legal argument that no illegal wrongdoing is happening. Moralism aside, because morals are somewhat subjective in certain standings, and if Adam hadn't done that in the office, like okay, yeah, you're kind of a crappy human being for like doing this without the consent of your significant other.
that to me would be a situation of I don't care. That's not my
Exactly.
business.
There's a lot of
Like that is
people.
it is not up to me to care about that. Whereas I feel like if there's predatory things happening, I feel like it's kind of up to everyone to care about that.
Yeah, and there's like it's a very small subset, but there are community members who are trying to defend this, and it's no, this isn't okay. Rooster
I
Teeth,
mean,
as I understand it, basically like I envision the way the conversation happened is Rooster Teeth came forward and said, "You have a day to put together a statement and quit, or you're fired."
probably.
Because like the day after this, or it took a weekend, and the response from the company, like the actual individuals, it was probably delayed, and probably the company saying like, take a second and process before you say anything, and remember that you're still affiliated with a large media giant. But at the same time, I get the feeling they told him like, you're allowed to be emotionally affected by this, because a lot of you clearly had no idea this was going on. Different members of Achievement Hunter and Funhouse and ex-members of Funhouse have said a lot about it, talking about like trying to, if you guys need support to the community, to people affected by it. Michael's and Lindsay's, Michael and Lindsay Jones probably had one of the more like upsetting, where it's just like, this was a guy that we considered family. Like, this is a betrayal that I cannot imagine. Jack's statement on it was heartbreaking. Because Jack takes, and he should not have to, but he takes some level of personal responsibility for this, because he and Jeff both brought Ryan into Achievement Hunter. And he, like, when Jack finds out about stuff like this, it happens infrequently, but it's happened enough that there is a precedent where Jack boils and boils and boils and then explodes because cannot contain his frustration and his anger. Happened at an RTX or something like that. There was I guess an affiliate or something like that of Achievement Hunter. This was years and years ago, but I guess they found out that he'd been exploiting some other fans or something like that, and they basically told him, "You're fired, you're out." The guy showed up to an RTX like a year later, and Jack like came up to him, and Jack is a big dude, like grabbed him by the shirt and was like, "Get the fuck out. You are not welcome here. We made that incredibly clear. You are not welcome here." Unrelated, the guy was found dead a year later.
Oh, good.
Apparently had some mental health issues to go along with that. As you might expect from somebody who does things like that to people.
Yeah.
But it's just like, somebody made the joke, if Jack's that mad, we might find Ryan in a dish a year later. But that doesn't, I should say, Jack is not the kind of person
not condoning.
It's just that was the chain of events, and it's kind of a weird thing.
Well, and I think you run into what I think is a very thorny issue in some respects, and a clear-cut issue in others, where it's what I'm thinking of is just like how mental health affects how we treat other people. And I think it's I personally, as someone who's had a lot of difficulty with mental health, I think it's clear-cut in the sense of there are things which cannot be excused by that, because no matter how low you are, you're never forced to do these things.
Yeah.
I've definitely yelled at family members and friends and stuff, and like lashed out in ways that was not not acceptable, and I think that I don't think that your mental health issues excuse that behavior. I think that they can help the behavior be understood perhaps a little better.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it gets a little thorny when it's less damaging to others. I think is when it gets more thorny. When it's less clear cut, when it's more like, I can understand why someone would do that. I can take myself through the mental steps of how you could reach that position. When you're going out of your way to do, and usually it's like spur of the moment things. It's lashing out at someone in a moment. I think that where it really becomes quite clear cut is when you have these very premeditated long-term patterns of behavior, it's like, dude, this is not just a low point for you. Like you're repeatedly choosing to continue to invest in this cycle of behavior for yourself.
It's a
And
constant, and we have
that's on
evidence this
you.
has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, I don't get to just punch somebody because I'm mad.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. Like, yeah, it's frustrating to me how many people both, like, I think that there is genuine and fair frustration on the part of people who, feel like mental health is never taken into account when you do those spur of the moment things, like if you yell at somebody or something. But at the same time, I think that, there you can get a little frustrated when people who have done these things, who have been found out, make these statements that kind of center on their own struggle.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he said, but I just speaking generally, that kind of, I don't like that. That doesn't sit right with me, because what that kind of says is, this is why I'm not responsible for my own behavior,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what it
and I
felt
that
like
just doesn't
almost.
fly with me.
Well, and like he's still reaching out to some of these fans now, and like clearly he either doesn't have a lawyer or he's not listening to his lawyer, because any lawyer would be like, dude, you need to
Don't do
stop.
that.
So that was a hard moment in like the cusp of everything else that was going on. Like it was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do now. Like I just watched like 4 years of my life all of a sudden just like don't make any more sense. They already didn't, because I was also during like a really weird time in my life. But and then I'm trying to come up with a name other than what her name is, because we're trying to protect people's identities here. Because I didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to talk about a little bit what happened on the podcast," but I did tell her I do technically have a podcast. Not that that really matters. We will call her um,
Toadette.
Toadette. She's a little hotter than Toadette. She's a lot hotter than
Not
Toadette.
possible.
I'm gonna tell you right now, man. Uh, we we will. I was gonna say let's call her Emily, but I'm like, what if Emily listens to this podcast? She feels like we're talking like, what happened? Um,
Yeah, Emily, I don't know if you're aware, but you went on a date with Nathan
yeah, a
in
surprise.
the last few days.
Um,
Someone
we'll
probably should have told you.
we'll call her. We'll call her Liz. We'll call her Liz until I
Okay.
inevitably screw up and just say her name. So Liz and I apparently have known each. Well, apparently we knew this. We've known each other for like 12 years. Like I think when we met was during our theater days. I was probably like 4 years apart, so I was probably about 16. She's probably about 12 at the time. My best friend's sister. Like I didn't even think about it. Whatever. I don't know that we'd ever had a conversation maybe more than 5 or 10 words. But we knew who each other were, and eventually we found each other on Twitter of all things, like a year and a half ago or something like that. And we go back and forth as Twitter mutuals. It's just kind of like a fun exchange. Now, I hadn't really thought about it at the time, but I made that post and you saw it of like, hey, you know what? Since everything's going on, if you tell me that you're registered to vote, like I'll tell you if I ever had a big old crush on you. And joke, 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 whatever. And now anybody who actually finds this Twitter thread will know exactly what's going on. But I'm gonna stick to my guns here. Uh, Actually, you know what? Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
There's only so much. I mean, if you bring up the topic at all, there's only so much you can do to protect someone's anonymity.
Yeah, right. So we're just gonna bring up what happened because to me it's very funny, like the course of events that happened. Like I just, it was too funny and too like, I want us to use the word storybook, but like it's the kind of stuff that only happens in like rom coms or whatever, and not in like Okay, so here's the original post. It's like, tell you what, if you're registered to vote, I'll tell you whether or not I have a crush on you at some point. Point being, get out there and vote, damn it. Like, that's the whole thing. So she comes in, she says,
Sure.
I had a crush on almost every single person in the theater group we were in for at least 5 minutes at one point. Girls and guys. Also, I'm registered. And I said, see, you get it. I wonder how many of them turned out every now and again. Because, like, I converse with, like, 3 of those people now. That's it. And she says, I Facebook stalk him every now and again, and I dodge a lot of bullets. And once again, I am registered, sir. To which I reply, oh, dang, right, I didn't answer that question. I mean, it's not the first time I crushed out on someone outside of my league. To which she replies, and this was the moment of, all right, I have to say something later. The only people out of your league are the people you believe are out of your league. And I was like,
Interesting.
damn.
Interesting.
Damn. What do I do? Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't read these things well. What do I do with this? I finally, I just DM'd her on Twitter. I was like, I didn't want to, like, say this on the Twitter thread in case, like, you're joking around or whatever. And I don't want to, like, put you on the spot because it's a douchebag thing to do. But I was like, if you want to go, like, I'm actually down to hang out because, you know, you've always seemed like a cool person because you're more or less like your brother in a lot of ways, who was also, like, a paragon of a human being. So,
True.
and she's like, yeah, sure, let's hang out or whatever, and kind of we went back and forth to figure out what we were doing, and then she immediately, like, texted her brother or whatever. She's like, so this is what's happening or whatever. Her brother and her sister-in-law, I almost said the name, Dave.
Dave.
That's a running joke in our group too. Dave and his wife Dave, we'll call her Dave.
Why?
And if they watch this, they'll get a kick out of it. They went to go get drinks on, like, Friday, at this place for happy hour, and you know, one of the places is practicing good social distancing practices because we're all trying to play things safe because, you know, the world is on fire and sick. But she's like, I don't know, like, he seems like a cool guy, but, like, you know, you guys are, like, you know him, like, isn't he like super, like, conservative Christian and like, you know, all these different things, and, like, what if he's like, is he virgin? Like, what if things happen and I have to, like, deal with that? And Dave's wife, looks her dead in the eye, looks Liz dead in the eye and says, Liz, I can 100% confirm to you, both of those things are not the case.
That is so funny.
Because I dated Dave, like, for a couple months, long before Dave and Dave ever got together.
Knowing everybody in that group, except Liz, like, I can picture that exchange going down, and it makes me laugh. Like, I find that really funny.
Well, it's just like, it was such a funny moment where I'm like, I get the, you know, not everybody has sex. It's fine, whatever. If that's your choice, cool. But, like, if you've really seen my Twitter for longer than about a week, you know, you don't really know a whole lot about my religious beliefs, and I kind of keep that to myself. But, you know, I'm pretty far left in a lot of my stances. Yeah, it's not even up for debate. So I was just like, where did you get that? So we joked about that when we went to this place called Uptown Barrel Room in downtown Vancouver that is doing masks, temperature checks. All the employees are wearing gloves and masks. Like, I remember walking in and they had the little temp gun beep. I was like, cool. This is good.
Did you try to run through the checkpoint?
Right.
Like, can't believe it.
So
anyway, that's a different story.
We had a really great time. We hung out after the fact at her apartment, and that was just, I mean, I talked to you about what happened all told, but it's, like, very clearly, like, we're still talking, texting, whatever, we're hanging out. This is where things get kind of, like, difficult and fucky, and it's going to roll into what I was talking about right before we started, or right as we started. So I've been going back and forth with her, just kind of chatting and seeing how she's doing. On Monday, she woke up feeling kind of nauseous and just kind of like woozy
Oh no.
and different things, and had like chills and stuff like that. By the end of the day, she felt pretty all right. Like still not all the appetite wasn't all there or whatever. I was like, okay, we'll just keep rest and stuff like that. She woke up today feeling worse, still like
Oh,
cold sweats and chills and
oh
nausea and
jeez.
all that kind of stuff. Like she sat up and immediately was like, if I move any faster, I'm gonna throw up. And I've been going back and forth with her, and I was like, do you need like talk me through your symptoms? What's going on here? And it's just like the nausea and the cold sweats and chills or whatever. And I was like, you know what? Do you like? I'm gonna be kind of in the Portland area anyway. Do you want me like a ride to like the clinic or whatever? She's like, I would. You don't have to do that. I was like, right. That's not what I asked. And she's like, I would really appreciate that. So I brought her like a little care package to go along with it. But they, out of an abundance of caution, out of like the, you know what, just in case, they did give her a COVID test, and we have to, wait a couple days for those results. The thing that has me like kind of like, okay, don't be super anxious about this, is when they took her temperature at the clinic, it was like 99, which is like within. I probably run at 99 on the regular.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's nothing to worry about there. There's no real like shortness of breath or anything like that. She's just fatigued and all that.
I mean,
So I
just
figure,
sucks if
yeah,
nothing else.
it's if we weren't in a pandemic world, I would chalk that up to like either
That
food
sucks.
poisoning or like a stomach virus or something like that. Which all in all is probably what it is. But like every other little thing, um, came up clean. So whatever they tested her for was like nothing. So they're like, we'll take this test out of abundance of caution. And I'm like, I am generally an optimistic person. I always have been. I tried to be cynical for a long time, and it just made me seem like a jackass, which is not fun.
That's such a funny. That's
You're
such a
just a
funny
drip at
way to put it.
parties.
I tried to be cynical for so
It
long.
didn't work. But like, there's that very small part of me like, okay, trying to plan out like, if the test comes back positive, I'm gonna level with you. That means that I am probably gonna take a test and come back positive as well. That's just
Sure.
the reality of what happened. I am like, I've chatted with my family about that, and they're just like, well, like, shit happens. It wasn't because no single party was not being careful enough in their daily life. It's just that's if an infection is going to happen to a person, this is kind of the way it's supposed to, where you took all the steps, and if you still got infected, that sucks. That's horrible. Not because
Sure.
people are out doing COVID parties to try and catch this thing. That's insane. But I'm like, I'll probably end up quarantining here, and just we'll figure out some kind of system, because we got my grandmother in the house too, and just like out of an abundance, it's all the caution stuff. Like, here's my mask. I'm wearing it anytime I leave this room. And like, I feel fine. I I had a scratchy throat when I got out of the car after taking her to the clinic, but that's because I like sprayed the car with Lysol like 3 times. And probably
Well, and
inhaled more of that
honestly, I
stuff.
mean, my understanding is that if you were having symptoms in the next couple of days, that would actually be kind of a good sign because the incubation period's kind of long.
Yeah, that's the other thing. And
So, like, if you were having symptoms, it would mean it was probably just like a cold rhinovirus. Like,
yeah. The other thing that I am maybe a little more okay. There's the like vain, selfish part of me that has concern, as well as like the professional part of me that has concern. The professional part of me that's concerned is, if this comes back positive, it means that I have to put a 14-day pause on my work, which
hmm,
there's still stuff that I can do unless I like end up with some kind of weird severe case, which could happen, but it's not likely, just the way the statistics shake out.
sure.
If that happens, there are things that are going to grind to a screeching halt. I have kind of a plan in the back of my head. I'm going to talk to my team about it tomorrow. Just say like, this is kind of what's going on. I know we talked about like, oh, awesome, Nathan got to go on this really fantastic date, woohoo, because it's a bunch of girls in my team, and they're like, oh, oh Nathan, oh, like that kind of thing. And to say like, if she comes back positive by Thursday, because I think that's when we get her results back, then I will say like, okay, I have these people who are ready to go, or at least hopefully got them ready to go. I want to make sure that they're taken care of, and we have a couple awesome agents who can handle this. Um, why are you asking me this? No. Just to be like, how do we play it out? There's the professional part of me that is, concerned. There's the like familial part of me that's concerned is like, okay, I have to make sure that I don't expose the rest of my family to this more than maybe I already have, which is already not likely. Like I've gone over, like I looked
Sure.
at the one of the things that always puts my mind at ease is looking at numbers. It appeases at least the logic part of my brain, even while like the emotional part of me is like going at a million miles an hour. The logical part of me puts like the infection rate here or down in Oregon at like it's like 0.8% or something like that. It's
It's very
very
unlikely.
low if you're doing what you're supposed to. Um,
Right.
then there's the like the personal, emotional, selfish part of me that's like, oh shit, if she tests positive, then like I really wanted to take her out again on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope it's negative.
Oh, I do
That's,
too.
I mean,
I'm like cautiously optimistic about it, but it's just like
sure.
it's hard to be, it's hard to know, you know?
What a weird time where we tell people it's like, man, I sure hope you have a flu.
Right? My God.
Like,
Oh my God. I hope it's mono. Like,
it occurs on that subject. I know you know from our time together at PLU how often I get sick,
yeah,
uh, and in a lot of ways that's gotten better because of continuing allergy treatment, literally all that time. But I've thought about it a couple times over the last like month. It's like I haven't gotten sick since March.
she and I were talking about that.
I was like, who am I?
Yeah. Congratulations, Brennan. You've become immune to everything.
It's just weird because I mean you remember I would get sick like every month
Yeah.
for like at least 3 days.
You were probably the reason a lot of us didn't get sick because you would get sick so early. Would be like, okay, let's just take a little extra vitamin C. We'll all be fine. You joked
You're
about
all
being the
fine.
canary in the mine, but it was absolutely 110% true.
It was totally true. Oh god. Yeah, but it's so weird to me. Like I'm used to it being such a constant in my life that like every like 5 to 6 weeks I'm gonna get a little bit of a sore throat and it's gonna kind of suck. I never really get super sick. Like I get sick enough to be really uncomfortable and unhappy for like a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And so it's again not worth it, but just a weird silver lining amid everything that sucks.
Yeah. It's been interesting.
So
So we talked a lot about like just stuff that's happening in life, which I feel like that was just a conversation that needed to happen. I want to talk more about what happened overall because like I can send a whole bunch of messages, but it's not like the same.
yeah,
But let's transition over to what we've been playing these past couple days because that's been kind of interesting as well as an escapade in D&D, which maybe we should start with what happened in Everfall 1.5.
the astral playing game.
Yeah.
But by the way, I just realized that the stream still says Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, well, I mean, I told it to not. So.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you mean
Maybe I
category?
refresh.
Uh-oh. Hang on.
Yeah.
Let me, uh, where's edit? There we go. Oops. Podcast. Well, it's a good thing we don't do this for a living, am I right?
There we go. Talk shows and podcasts.
Okay, fantastic.
Um,
So,
yeah, I mean I hope I hope Cameron's watching, but like that was so much fun.
for those of
I
you
really
who
enjoy that.
I don't think we've ever really talked about this game. So we have this DM. We're gonna call him Dave. Um,
No, I just used his name, but
no,
everyone forget
everybody
the last 20 seconds.
forget that we named him Cameron. His name is Dave from here on out. So Dave started a D&D campaign after playing with a lot of us, and it was myself and you and Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave, and then eventually Dave joined us, and then it was this like kind of this weird campaign where half of us were like super serious about what was going on, and then half of us were super not. Or I would say not, but like maybe a little bit less serious. Because on the one hand, we had like the brooding half vampire gun priest. We had the mute paladin woman who had her family stolen away from them, and whatever the fuck Schwoof was. This
I
Kenku
love
with this
Schwoof
tragic
so
backstory where he
much.
watched his sister die, and then we had um, two bards, one of which I don't even know how to describe. I don't know how to describe either one of your characters. Except one of them thought he was Apollo or whatever, and then the other being,
I literally went to Dave and I was like, I want to be the god Apollo. How can I make that happen?
and then Officer Vice.
God.
There's no way to describe that character in a way that really does that insanity justice. Cause like from a like, here's the thing. And Dave, I know you're watching, Travis. The thing that has always impressed me about the way Travis makes his joke characters is that when somebody else makes a joke character, they suck in a lot of regards. Travis remembers that this is a mechanics first system, and that there's a lot of combat that happens in 5th edition. You need to be ready for it. So, as such, you need to have a character that at least functions in combat. That's kind of a rule that you need to be aware of. For those of you watching who are planning on making a goofy, funny character, if you're worthless in combat, guess what? You just like cut the Achilles heel of your entire party for the sake of a couple of pained, forced laughs.
Well, I
Vice,
think
the maniac that he was still incredibly capable in combat.
I think that's getting into the kind of overarching theme, and you and I have talked about this privately on many occasions about what we appreciate about the way Travis plays his characters, which is for the vast majority of times, Travis understands when his joke character needs to shut up.
Yep, that's the other thing. Where you can have a character that is all, look at me, I'm being funny, but the second the spotlight moves away, you step back and you let what's happening go on. Which is why characters like Bobby and Gabriel and Officer Vice and Hogan and really any other character is allowed to, I guess, is able to, I shouldn't say allowed, because you should allow players to at least try
Sure.
their thing to a certain extent, but to be able to exist and function in a long form narrative. Because in any other campaign or in any other player's hands, Vice would not have been able to exist for as long as he did. But Vice went forever.
I think that part of the reason that Vice worked so well is because that when we split the party into those two separate groups, what I like to call team grown-ups and team requires adult supervision but doesn't have it. That was like we really went off the rails there, and I think it really made Vice fit in because we were just all insane. And the thing though that really impresses me is when you get a character like Bobby, who he's hilarious, always funny, and is doing absurd things. But then you'll have those moments where all of a sudden Travis will just like get super real for a second, and you just be like, "Fuck!" Like this is a real person.
Dude,
This character
none of
has
us were ready for that.
some depth. And the thing that's cool about when Travis makes characters is he planned that from character creation.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I really appreciate about that is for me, I think that when people think about joke characters in general, they're thinking about the person who's like, I made a wizard with 8 intelligence, and it's, or, whatever the fuck my illusion wizard character was in that game where we were all supposed to make evil characters, but I didn't understand, so I made a silly one. Um, you think of these two-dimensional kind of like running gags, and I guess I think you could kind of argue that Vice fit into that category, but done well. But the thing I really like about characters like Bobby and Hogan is they make sense. They actually, I mean, within the realm of fantasy, you can accept that these are people who would exist.
There's very little. I mean, there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief that happens, but
Sure.
that is very easily taken care of by the fact that we're playing in a fantasy world.
Yeah. Like, it's in a world where someone can be a full 2 feet taller than other people and, like, literally 5 times as strong, you can kind of accept they could go for most of their life not really understanding how to do things,
Yeah, not
except
having a
what they're good
concept
at.
of the world. It's
Yeah,
fine.
and
It makes sense.
in a world where races mature at vastly different rates, you can accept things like that as well. And I think it's really interesting to see that done. The thing I know that Travis loves to bring this up, and I think it's quite funny. The thing I liked about Vice was he said, if anyone at any time had cast Greater Restoration on Vice, he would have stopped being a crazy person who believed in the fashion police.
That was like one of the funniest things to me. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
And the funniest thing about that is, for most of the latter half of the game, his Officer Vice was in the company of 2 bards, one of whom specialized in like healing and restoration magic, and it somehow never happened.
Yeah, it's the funniest thing to me. So, but anyway,
But I think we brought this up in order to talk about the Astral game, though. I think,
so at some point there's some extended universe stuff that happens. We're very like Marvel MCU with this continuity because after
which
that,
has been great.
Dave
I
decided to
love it.
start up Everfall 2, which comprised of myself, Dave, and Dave. Um, but he decided that he wasn't gonna like put the end there, so I guess he introduced. I've had a couple sessions with Mulgrim and Gazlin, which is like pirate captain and a warlock. That's very reductive as to what they actually are, but and then I guess he decided that he was gonna have like the couple of characters because you and Dave had
So
decided that we're gonna run a couple of characters as well, and eventually that turned into what we have now.
we had discussed that a fair amount. So back when my character Finland left Everfall 1 fairly early on, it was because, and I talked about this with him. I don't know if I ever actually talked about this too much with you, on or off stream. I must have, but I just forgot. But Finland kind of came to the conclusion of like Finland is a genuine, like Finland is probably the only character I've made where I feel like he deserves the good part of his alignment. Like, Finland's a good person. Finland will go out of his way to take care of other people, and that really that was mostly apparent in the game that I did not run, the game that I was in uh, with Dave and Dave, which Dave ran, where Finland took I took the plot thread where the whole group in Everfall 1 had found this old elder brain in this mind flayer stronghold. He had actually taken some tadpoles with the intention of trying to basically raise a new generation of mind flayers who was not evil. And that was the entire premise of that little miniature campaign, with me and Dave. So Dave was running it, and then I was playing Finland, and then the other Dave was playing Umpuru, who was an Ulitharid who Finland had hatched and raised and taught to, not be horrible. And it was really cool to kind of go through. There were some really cool roleplay moments there with me and Dave. And then Gazlan, played by the other Dave. I'm just getting confused with the Daves now. But
I like
it
how
was really...
in a bunch of other streams we've actually said who they are, but now I've committed to this joke that I started in the Everfall 2 group.
But anyway, long story short, the end of that game found Umpuru as their full Elder Brain self. And then the goal was, okay, we have to go into the astral plane because we got a big attack. Like we were the Mind Flayer Elder Brain, when it first reached out into the astral plane, it was just absolutely attacked by this Mind Flayer hive consciousness that existed in the astral plane, which tried to basically make that Elder Brain, who was not on board with the whole world domination thing, another arm of this Mind Flayer collective. So after kind of fighting that off, we realized that we needed to deal with that. And so that brings us to this game that we're currently running, where we're traveling through the astral plane on Nathan's character, Ivar's ship, and trying to find out information about this Mind Flayer hive mind. Which brings us to the other night, where I think I'll let Nathan take it from here on what happened in this encounter.
Ivar is a half-elf, and we've done a little bit of homebrewing just to kind of fit the aesthetic I was going for, because I wanted Space Marine, like somewhere in between Warhammer 40k and StarCraft 2 in terms of its aesthetics. Maybe leaning a little more towards like StarCraft just in terms of the little sleeker design, and not as like ridiculous in a lot of the same ways, but it draws inspiration from both. From a mechanic standpoint, Ivar is a half-elf champion fighter. The only way he could get more bland if he was human. And we have attached to him a couple little fun things that make him just a little more interesting to play, especially in the context of the game that we're running. And Cameron Dave tends to go a little more wild in terms of what the creatures are, and therefore what our abilities and items and things like that can be. That being said,
It's a little harrowing at times.
yeah, that being said, Ivar has a fairly simple kit. The armor functions more or less like a suit of plate mail that is also like a belt of hill giant strength. So nothing egregious, nothing ridiculous. You can kind of roll this as it is. That's 2 magic items in 1. The other thing that it does, it provides a little bit of temporary health. Not nearly enough to like make a huge difference, but it is enough to like give me that little bit of edge that I need, and to like shrug off a little bit of damage here and there as necessary. In longer fights, it's more important. In short combat, almost irrelevant. He has what we call the Eye of the Emperor, which is this homebrewed magic item that basically gives him either like the ability to tell if people are lying if he activates it, or predator vision, because I just thought it would be cool. And then in terms of his like combat kit, it is the Honor Guard's Warhammer, which is just a Warhammer that deals, I think it's like a +2 or +3 Warhammer that deals an additional like 2d6 thunder damage on hit, which is impressive. The other is the Seeker's Arm, which is just a reskinned heavy crossbow. Like I have crossbow expert as a feat instead of having to brew up some like ridiculousness. It's a +3 crossbow that deals an additional 1d4 fire damage, and that's it.
Jeez.
Yeah, legit. That's all it does.
Wow.
Now, granted, +3 is a huge boost in 5th edition's architecture. We are in this situation where we're trying to do this kind of handoff, but trying to dupe the bad guys at the same time. We're passing off what is effectively Pandora's jar. We do this whole negotiation table thing in a demi-plane with the head of this guild that we're dealing with, or I assume it's the head of the guild, whoever like hired us.
As far as we know, at least.
Yeah. So this woman goes back and forth with, I think it was his name, Fritz is his name, Dave's
Fritz.
character. Yeah. So they
Kill me
do
with the
this
Daves.
negotiation table thing, which was an entertaining thing to watch. And then through a usage of both time stop and demiplane, we're able to take that item and put it into another demiplane. We put the box inside of a box. Um, or I rather, we took the box that was in a box and put it in another box, which is more
Which
confusing than
itself was in
Dave,
a
Dave,
box.
Dave. So they're just like, what happened? You know, this, that, and the other. It's like, well, I guess I just have to kill you. That was more or less what was said, and then we roll initiative.
Well, and before this, I had cast Foresight on both you and myself because we have epic boons at this point, and the epic boon I have is gives me an additional ninth level spell slot. And Foresight is not a concentration spell, so I cast that on both yourself and my character,
Combat
giving us
is
advantage
rolled.
on everything.
Initiative begins. I rolled a 31 on my initiative. It is time to go. For reference, the boss and her bodyguard rolled like a 12 and a 7, I guess. They rolled horribly low. So Ivar goes, and I action surge, because that's what you do when you are a ranged champion fighter. You action surge on your first round because you can hit anything at this point. I rolled 6 crits in a row.
I think it might have been 7.
It was like 7 and then a miss or something like that.
Yeah.
That's like, it's one of those things where in some cases I'm a little dice cursed and it happens more with skill checks. And it's the stuff that
Mm.
tends to matter is where that happens. But in combat, I tend to roll a little bit better, and some of it is just I'm a power gamer. I always have been. I min max a lot to do well in those situations. So of course I took the archery combat style, which gives you +2 to hit, and of course I have a +3 weapon, all these kinds of things. So I'm rolling at this ridiculous height. So even though I'm rolling sharpshooter, I'm not really hitting myself with the same deficit.
Well, and Foresight helps too.
Oh, foresight was a huge help in all that. We did all the math and it was like 264 points of damage. And Dave is sitting there and he's like, well, you notice that after the first shot, there's not really an effect on the boss, but you just keep shooting because that's what you've been trained to do. And as you empty the magazine, you watch as the bodyguard, all of a sudden, like a bunch of holes open up in his chest. He falls over, and I said, well, I imagine he's not quite dead yet, so I'm going to pull the pistol out of my holster and shoot him in the head as I walk towards this woman. Where she had, it started out as this really smug, like, oh, you guys are going to die, to the, maybe I'm going to die face.
Yeah.
A round of combat goes after me, which I guess things happened or whatever. Um, Mapuru tried to do a stabby thing that didn't work, and Fritz was sassy, and you did a thing. And then my turn rolls around again. As a way to try and get away, this woman just like casts gate, and was like, "Oh, this is how I oh, well, they're gonna fall with me. Oh no,
Well, that's because I was currently a bullet. Is because
yeah,
my wild shape. I was a bullet. That's my special thing, by the way. Is Dave is letting me use my homebrew rules for druids, which is you can you can be any creature as long as the CR is right. I think that I limit it to like you can't be anything that's not a natural creature. So like you can't be a
aberrations are out."
celestial or anything. I think actually aberrations were
Oh
in.
really?
It was like monstrosities, aberrations, and beasts, of course. Uh,
So probably no
some
like
other
no fae, no fiend, no undead, no.
no.
Okay, that I get that. I like that. I don't know that I would use it, but I like it. So
The thing I found, yeah, go ahead.
my turn rolls around again, and we're all 20th level, so I have another action search to throw out. So I just do it again, and it's slightly less, but it is enough to cap her health out. So then it's just like, yeah, just I know Mapuru wants a tag of that brain, but You hired Ivar for a reason. Ivar kills people. That's what he does. So boom, and we all fall through the gate. The like cool guy moment, which was a lot of fun for me, was I this, I really enjoyed this moment. So you're all like doing your role play thing of, oh, this is what I'm doing, and you did your meditation thing, and Fritz goes and wanders off for a little bit, and Peru does their thing. So my action hero moment was, um, Ivar reloads when it's cinematically convenient or is cool,
Of course.
because this is an action movie at this point. So Ivar goes to reload. As he goes to pull the magazine, he also pulls out this like little case, puts the magazine in, opens up the case, and pulls out a cigar. Pulls the heat release to eject one of the spent heat rods, catches that, and then uses it to light the cigar. And I had a Nerf dart as a prop. And like, that's so dumb and so cliched and so stupid, but it felt so cool in the moment.
It was great. I thought it was great. I feel like the session we had, that was just like, I mean, Dave's games are usually a winner for me, but that to me was just like A plus. The whole session was so fun, and it was, props to everyone else, all of us players and Dave, because I feel like just the character beats and the interactions were just like so on, and and then Dave put us in situations which really just gave our characters a chance to really shine. Like Fritz got to have his cool moment doing all the talking, and like that made sense. And then you got to have your action hero moment. You know, I think that you actually said you like slide over the table or some shit while you're shooting, and like that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then like Peru got to have their moment where they were just like, I'll take your brains, and my character got to have his moment of, kind of being the nature person. It was just really fun. Like I had such a great time. It's those kind of sessions that really make me want to keep playing.
The thing about that really stood out to me in terms of the mechanics of that moment is that you can strip away certain things and that still would have more or less happened. If you take away the foresight, the damage wouldn't have been quite as impressive because it wouldn't have been as many crits. But you know what? Foresight is a 9th level spell for 20th level. It totally makes sense that you would cast that on your fighter, who would be throwing out that many rolls in one given moment. You can take away the +3 weapon, and then we tailor that back by about, I think 24 points is what you would tick off of that all told. You tick off the fire damage, which would probably be another, what would come out to about 20 points of damage. And then if you start taking feats away, that becomes a different pickle entirely, because that's another 80 right out there. But the damage was just what it was. It wasn't because, oh, I had Hex. That was the other thing, but that was from Magic Initiate. But it's one of those things where the damage was as such that those are damage rolls that a fighter can put out more or less. And you strip away some of the magic, and it still is an incredibly impressive number that not a lot of other classes can turn out without burning very high level resources.
That's the cool thing about fighters is that you burn action surges, but once the action surges are gone, you're just going, and you just keep going. So
And
you run out
that's
of bullets.
what I really love about playing fighters and, other martial classes to a lesser extent is that I enjoy being able to get in there and just be operating at that high level. He and I are talking a little bit about what we can do to like expand the kit a little bit. I don't like the idea of necessarily overshadowing people in combat, but at the same time, like, I built Ivar specifically to be good at killing things.
Well, and for me at least, like as the other frontliner, I don't. Well, you're not really a frontliner, I guess, because you use a ranged weapon. But I suppose as the other person who is expected to do the like martial engagements, I don't feel overshadowed because I feel like Finland and Ivar fulfill such different roles. Like Ivar's job is to kill everything. Finland's job is to be the one taking damage while that happens.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a discussion we could have another time talking about druids in general. I think that of all the characters I've played at 20th level, which is I think a few now, Druid is definitely the most fun for me. And I think it's for me, I think Druid may be my favorite class in the game. Because for me it's like just the right amount of that unbreakable nature, like you mentioned with martial classes, the ability to just be like, I can keep doing this all day. Because once you get to 20th level, you get your wild shapes forever. You can just continue wild shaping and getting an infinite pool of hit points. And that, even though, even, and this is getting into my homebrew rule idea about the different things you can turn into, even the best thing you can turn into is not that good at putting out damage. But they can be pretty good at defense. The exception to that would be some of the dragons, which I exclude from the rules for that reason, because you can turn into like a red dragon wormling, and then you're talking about being able to pump out like a lot of area of effects damage. But if you're just like turning into a bullet or an Otyugh or something, that's just a big hit point pool.
Yeah, it's just a big
But
bag.
I think the thing I appreciate most about being a 20th level druid is I finally feel like I can use my wild shape for roleplay in a way that I really felt like I couldn't before.
It's that kind of weird expenditure of resources thing that you're not always comfortable doing in those settings.
I've always kind of I've always kind of been thinking how I could fix that in games. I've toyed with things about like, oh, you can use your wild shape to turn into things with a CR less than one as much as you want, or something. Like, because I feel like it's such a common thing for people playing druids to be like, I feel like I can't use my wild shape for anything but the most optimal thing in combat. Like I can't do cool things like turn into a cat and like follow the dude, or like, turn into a housefly and like check in on this conversation, because I feel like no matter how good the roleplay opportunity seems, it feels like it could never justify taking away my most important asset in combat. Because you only ever get two. You only get two wild shapes for the entirety of your leveling progress until 20th level, which is a weird structure to me.
Not everything in 5th edition is perfectly balanced, or have we looked at the Ranger?
The poor ranger, man.
It's
Once,
bad.
we talk a lot about how people should play more ranged fighters, and I agree. Uh, but the poor ranger, if people started to realize, wait, I can just make a ranged fighter, no one would play the ranger ever again.
Yep, it's I think I told Dave about this, and he came to an agreement with me that like if you want to do like the cool archer, you just build a ranged fighter, and then at some point you pick up skilled to add a couple extra skills on top of that, and be a play outlander, or
Well, because it's like,
play
what?
scout. Like
Yeah, like what does the ranger really offer you at all that another class doesn't do better?
it's the
It
problem that it runs into is that it from the get go, for it to function in any substantial sense, you need to have that consistent conversation with your DM happening over that favorite enemy type thing. That's one of the big features of it, and it was pared down pretty significantly. I've done a little bit of reading on some of the older versions of the Ranger to kind of see like where they might have gone wrong, or what have you. So you have to have that conversation of, okay, like what's going to be in this campaign so my favorite enemy is useful to a certain extent. You pair that with the natural explorer feature that more or less just waves the exploration part of the game. It hand waves it in a way that is almost like consistently hand waved anyway. Once you get past a
Yeah.
certain level, like nobody cares about the exploration part anymore, because you're not you're not having to worry about random encounters, and if anything does attack you, it's more of a scripted event at that point.
When you
Um,
just teleport everywhere, like
that is the other thing.
people, they don't. Once you get up to a level where that starts to become significant, the party A doesn't really care about random encounters, and B just teleports all over the place if they have even one full caster.
I think that there are ways to do the ranger in a way that works and makes sense. I get why they left it in as a class in the system, but ultimately because of the way the mechanics on that class work, it doesn't pan out very nicely. It doesn't scale very well into the later levels like the fighter and the paladin, the other martial classes do. And the Unearthed Arcana Ranger that they put out to try and fix it, the only thing it did was that it front loaded the class super heavy. It didn't fix the problem of progression, it just made it so that by the time you hit a certain level, the other classes have caught up.
Just makes it so that everyone takes one level in Ranger,
Yeah, that
so they
was
can
the
get
other.
advantage on initiative or something. I don't remember what it was.
It was something ridiculous. I hope that um they eventually come out with a fully revised Ranger. Because I can see the bones of what they were trying to do. It just doesn't. It's not there.
I mean, I think that the Ranger is supposed to be for when you're like, hey, DM, I want to make a vampire hunter or something like that. It's for when you're like, I want to do a specific thing. I want to make a PC that is optimized for hunting the specific enemy in a specific environment. That's a cool idea. Problem is, if you don't have that very strong idea and that's not been discussed with your GM, like you said, it just that's all it has. And
You'll
if you take
suffer
that
for it.
away, yeah, like uh, when Brianna's character, the Gloomstalker Ranger, in Eboneth 2 or whatever it was, didn't even know she was a We didn't even know she was a Gloomstalker until like the end of the campaign because we literally never went to the Underdark. Which, to be fair, was not Travis's fault because he tried to take us to the Underdark. We just refused to die. If you remember, we did actually get. There was like a drow hunting party that tried to pick us up,
No, I
but
remember
we just
that.
killed them all.
We got lucky on that one. We got really lucky on that one.
Yep. I think it was like I was the only one left standing because that was my sorcerer with the absurd amount of hit points,
Something like
and
that, yeah.
it was like my last spell slot or something. That will almost God. That is just like still to this day to me is like one of the funniest things to me is when it was like, okay, you take 123 damage. And I was like, hold on, I haven't taken my turn yet.
Travis has said specifically, I tried at least 5 times because 3 players had Underdark notes in their backstories.
Yeah, like we kept like that game was so interesting to me because we had such a clear, well-defined like goal, and we were just too cowardly to pursue it.
I had not quite settled into my stolen car method of playing characters.
Well, and it was my first character, and I've taken I take responsibility for this, and I like to hope that I've improved as a player, but I think that at that time I was, and I think I've talked about this on stream before, but I had a hard time seeing past the like 3 other members of the party who are like, yeah, we like this side plot that Brennan's pushing, to the maybe like 2 or 3 other members who are like that doesn't interest us. Certainly Underdark meant death.
I mean, yeah, I felt that way.
Yeah,
Like I said, had not settled into the stolen car.
yeah.
And now
There were
I
there were a lot
play
of fun moments in them.
I play most characters. It's why I play like it's part of the reason why I play these martial classes because it's easier to be that way and suffer less consequences as you do because you just have more hit points to deal with those
I
consequences with.
I have to say, one of my favorite characters that you've ever made is Matthew. I still love Matthew.
I'm gonna level with you. I barely remember him.
Oh, I loved Matthew. I thought he was great. It
That
was
was that
such a
was a
bummer.
that was a rough game I think for some of us. Just and Travis will talk about this too. There were so many of us in that game.
Yeah.
It was hard to have those fun role play vignette moments because you had to include so many people in any given moment.
There were so many of us, and I mean, especially me, but I think all of us were less experienced players back then,
Yep.
and we were not as proficient at kind of being able to read the room, you know. And yeah, and then there is that aspect of us kind of coming to the conclusion of like we feel like we can't really fight the bad guy, and then the bad guy went away because of magic, and then we were just like, well, we gotta keep playing, so I guess we're doing Brennan's thing now. Um, and then you all turned into Tarrasques when I wasn't there, which I was so upset about.
That was very much a we need to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that was yeah, which is fair. I have to say, we've talked about this before. The one regret I have about that is I was kind of looking forward to seeing our characters having a showdown, because I feel like you and I have kind of always been in a place, I feel like, where that would not, where we would be able to have a role play interaction like that and it would not negatively affect our relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
And
think there's a part of me that hopes one day Travis says that was me
taking
taking the game out back. Shotgun noises in the distance. Sorry if that triggers anybody who grew up on a farm. Um, yeah, trigger warning for backwoods people. No, I hope that one day we can get into another game where we can actually have characters that, while they have, maybe we should talk about this to a certain extent, but have characters that have a like death vendetta against each other, but they know they have to deal with this thing first and are like,
yeah.
maybe not gentlemanly, but they're like, we like being awful to each other gives us no advantage in what was happening right now. But eventually somebody's gonna ask like, so what are you guys gonna do once this is all over? It's like, we're gonna try and kill each other. Oh haha.
Yep.
No 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 no.
No, no.
No, like one of us
And
is going to be dead.
the thing that I think is so funny about that is I think that you and I, because of the relationship we have and the dynamic that we have in real life, I think that we could make that really interesting, because whenever like whenever we play characters together as players in a game, we tend to gravitate towards just like we're buddies, you know, like we're the best buds of the gang. You know, at least I've noticed that. Maybe you didn't feel the same way, but I feel like multiple iterations of different characters in different games, when you and I are players together, we kind of tend to be like we're the buddy characters, you know. And I think that we would probably still do that, but then it would just be there would be those moments where it's like, still gonna fucking kill you though. Like
It's the moments of like, why if you're trying to kill him, why did you save his life? Because I'm supposed to kill him. You need to understand this.
yeah, totally.
It's
You know, and I think that just because of the way that you and I tend to build characters, it's going to be that situation of we don't know who's going to win. Probably it's going to rely a lot on who rolls a higher initiative roll, but whoever does win, the city they fight in is not going to be there anymore.
it's there's two like the two character dynamics I've wanted to play, of the two characters who are going to kill each other at the end, or the stupid and stupid but doesn't know it. It's that, or
Dumb
like
and
the,
dumberer.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I sent you that meme.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know which one I'm going to be. I will be gung ho stupid the entire way.
Oh, God. Well,
We have
on that
talked a
note,
fair number of different topics, but I think we should close out with, because I think I mentioned a little bit, what have we been playing lately? Because I think that's actually going to be the last good topic we can run on, because we've been going for about an hour and a half, and I got a little more time left in here before I run
yeah,
out of energy.
I gotta grab some dinner. But yeah, before we wrap up, I've been playing a lot of StarCraft. Been enjoying that. Been trying to not suck and failing, but you know, it's fun. Playing a lot of Zerg, getting I played Protoss for like ever, pretty much exclusively, and now kind of finally settling into Zerg and finding a way to have fun with it. Terran is still a blank fucking book to me. I was playing a couple games as Terran today, and I was just like, what? I don't know what I should be doing. Um, so I've been playing StarCraft, and then played a little bit of Baldur's Gate. Um, Hopefully, you, me, and Camden can all get in a game of that at some point soon. Uh, and I know you've been playing a little bit of that. I don't know if you played since you streamed it.
Not really. I've touched on it a little bit, but after the deleted, or not even deleted, but like the zero autosave incident, I'm like, I need to step away from this and be able to dedicate real time to this and have like be a little smarter. Because I just legit could not. I was like, no, if this happens again, I'm gonna rage quit, and
Yeah.
I will rage hard. I don't need that. I don't need to punch a hole through my monitor.
What else have you been playing lately?
I've been playing a lot of Hades recently. That
Oh
has been
yeah.
like my that's been my go-to game for a while now. I did not think I would enjoy roguelikes as much as I do now, and it may be just because I haven't played a whole lot of them. I've only played the really good ones. But I like the way it handles its progression and like its characters and the little interactions you get with them, these little vignettes here and there. They tell you a lot about the way these people are. The runs are. I thought I would get really pissed off with the fact that you can't like jump into a certain level after you get or to a certain point, like shortcuts and stuff like that, because they do that in games like Dark Souls where you'll have the opportunity to open up shortcuts to circumvent certain parts of the game, and it's built that such a way so you don't have to slog through. Like, for Christ's sake, if I had to slog through the entirety of Anor Londo every time I wanted to go fight Aldrich, I would have snapped my controller in half 6 times over. But the fact that every zone, like the moment where you're like, you know what, I'm getting kind of tired of this area, that's about when it feels like the boss fight hits for that level, and then you move on to the next set of boards, and then it's just kind of this continual progression. I think it's really interesting that once you get past spoilers for Hades for anybody who is playing. Once you get past the sewers and Cerberus, it just goes straight into the final boss fight with Hades, um, which is oh my god, that was a frustrating fight. There are I think 5 different weapons that you can use in the game, and you have a sword run or shield run or whatever. There's the sword, the spear, the shield, the bow, the gauntlets, and the gun. Um, well, it's for anybody who's worried, it's a machine gun and a grenade launcher. It's balanced. Don't worry about it. My favorite weapons in that right now are the shield and the gauntlets. My first fully completed run was with the gauntlets, which was surprising to me because that requires like the most aggressive play, and it's the most like risky way to play. I like the shield a lot as well because you can play a little more aggressively, but you always have the option to actually pull the shield up and defend yourself. I remember the fight against Hades where I finally beat him with the gauntlets, where you whittle him down, you whittle him down. I had a really good build running, like I picked up a lot of the really great drops that paired well. I got him down. I was like, yes, I can't. Why is the boss music still going? Why is the boss music getting more metal? No, sir, do not. He gets back up with more health, higher damage resistance, deals more damage, and has better attacks. I'd seen this stage before. I was like, we're ready for it this time. You're not going to catch me by surprise this time, fucko. You know that moment where you're pushing, you're like, this actually could be the moment. And I had this flash instant where I'm like, I have one opportunity, and if I do not take this, I may actually get killed in the next cycle because I'm losing my patience. So I went for the body blows, and got it. I was like, oh my god. Like, I was like, yes! Running around the room, whatever. The story goes, again, spoilers for Hades, is that Zagreus is thought to be the son of Hades and Nyx. This is proven to be untrue, where he finds out he's actually the son of Hades and Persephone. Persephone has escaped the underworld and now lives kind of in this kind of weird in between of the material world, outside of the gaze of both the underworld and Olympus. But he actually makes it to her, and they start to like have this conversation and bond, where she realizes, "I thought you like they told me that you were dead. I can't believe you're actually still alive." 'Cause she doesn't actually believe that this is her son. But eventually, like they're having this time, and suddenly Zagreus gets very, very sick, realizing that he cannot spend extended time in the immortal realm. He is bound to the underworld, and eventually is taken back by the river Styx. So the cycle begins again, but he wants more answers. So there is a reason as to why you keep having to fight through this over and over and over again. It is super compelling. I have two completed runs under my belt. I have done a gauntlet run and I've done a spear run, and I got really lucky on the spear run. But yeah, that game is really fantastic. It's one of those good examples of an early access game that actually delivered, as I understand it. I have very minor, if any, pet peeves with that game, and it boils down to the RNG of certain runs. I'm glad that I can't manipulate that in any way, shape, or form, but it does frustrate me that I'm not able to. But yeah, that's what I've been playing these days. I'm really, really enjoying that game. I'll probably try and boot up another run. I'll check on Liz, see how she's feeling.
Yeah.
Because I know,
God,
like, I feel weird. I should say I feel weird like texting her on the regular right now, be like, "How you feeling?" Because I feel like I'm not like. I should say we've only gone on the one date. We're not. Clearly, there's something happening for us. There's something really cool going on, but like, I'm not her boyfriend or anything like that, or at least as far as I know, and I wouldn't expect to be. But like, I'm balancing the fact that on the one hand, we went on one date. It was our chance to really bond, and we really hit it off. But on the flip side, this is my best friend's younger sister and somebody I've known for a very, very long time. It's hard not to care in a way that some people I think might find overbearing.
I think there's also, this is something that I don't miss about being single, is not that I miss a lot of things about it, but being in that period of like like I don't want to appear, I'm really interested and I want to talk to you a bunch, but I don't want to appear like overwhelming and overbearing, and because and the reality the reality is that, particularly for you know female identifying folks, it's something that they have to deal with on the regular in a very unpleasant way, in a way that I don't think that cis men really understand. And Olivia and I have talked about this a lot, and it's really interesting to get those other perspectives. But it's that thing of like, you have to have empathy for how the other person might react to how you're interacting with them, and it's hard because you're like, I want to talk to this person all the time, and
Yeah,
so it's
yeah. I want to be like I feel like I'm trying to catch up on 12 years of us not ever interacting. But I also, like, she and I had this conversation where we both have been very different people throughout the court. Like, I am not in any way really. I'd like to think I hung on to a couple of my core values as a human being, but like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, hell, even like 5 years ago, I'm not the same person that I was. I've changed in some regards where, I think there was a change where I became more progressive. There was a while there where I was kind of a jackass, but I always tried to keep to that idea of, being compassionate for other people and doing my best to put other people first. I think I've found in my memories like a long, pretty sappy, and at this, now that I look back on it and read it, I'm like, that's it's a good thing that came from a good place, because anybody else had written that, they look like a self-masturbatory dick, but it was something to the effect of, I talked about like why it's important to pay it forward and why you do good things for good people. And I went on and said the reason why I believe in this so wholeheartedly, and I still do to this day, you do good things for good people not because you expect the world to do good things for you, but just so that those people then go on and do those good things for other people. If at some point I do believe in karma to a certain extent, where eventually that is going to come back on you. It's just going to be the way it is. And some of it is just because there's going to be another like-minded person who's going to see you doing those same things and say, like, I wonder if somebody does the same thing for them. That's part of it. And, I told people, like, whenever I pay for something or do something for it's like, if you want to pay me back, that's cool. But if I didn't have it in my means to do that in the first place, I wouldn't have. If you're concerned about whether or not you'll ever be able to pay me back, don't worry about it. Just pay it forward.
Yeah.
But
just
it's dude,
man,
it's
making
really...
me think about the old days. Spending late nights after the show at your apartment because I didn't want to drive home and going to get some Taco Bell. Like, those are some positive core memories.
That's good. That's good. Well, everybody, that has been the TIWAKS podcast. We actually kept this down to a pretty manageable hour and a half and change. We covered a lot of really interesting topics, including some maybe not so fantastic things. As always, especially if some of the news recently has been affecting you guys in really negative ways, remember that you do not have to be plugged in 100% of the time. You are allowed to distance yourself from some of these things that are happening in the world. Do not close your eyes to these things. It is important that you not shut them out, but know that it is perfectly fine to step back and take a moment to breathe. That is okay. You're allowed to do that. As always,
it's not going to. Oh, go ahead.
I keep my Twitter DMs open. If any of you are watching this stuff and feel like you kind of want to talk about it, I mean, I'm just a talking head on the internet right now, but you can find my Twitter right there. You're more than welcome to DM me and reach out, and I can help you with some of this stuff. Can we get a jam stream one day, Bro Abomination? One day, Brogan, we will. Once I get that all figured out. But yeah, in the meantime, Brendan, do you have anything to close out with?
Oh, just going off what you were saying with the stepping back. I think it's important sometimes to remember it's not. You're not helping oppression by just saying, oh, I can't look at Twitter this week. Like, that's not vital to the movement, that you be plugged into Twitter all the time, or that you read the news every single day. Just like Nathan says, don't just completely shut things out. Also have grace for yourself. It's easy in a time like this to kind of look at all of your friends and family and people around you and feel like everyone is using their pandemic time better than you. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
If you're being safe and you're making ends meet, then you're using your pandemic time right. You don't have to learn 5 new languages or an instrument. Like, let's just get through it. Have some grace for yourself. I got news for you. No one's perfect.
So in the meantime, as always, I am at Roby1Kenobi91 on Twitter. You can find my Twitter handle up there. Bren is very much the same. You can find his Twitter right there, linked up in there. I can't point
whichever
all the way
corner
there
it is.
My finger just disappears. But you can find us there. And for our sign off, remember that if you use a vacuum cleaner on your mechanical keyboard, you run into a really weird moment where you actually suck up one of the keys.